When you get your hands on a big pile of dirty money, say a suitcase with $1 million in cash, the first thing you feel is that you've made it. It feels like the hard part is over and now you're rich. But that feeling is only the very first step in a long process, because that million is almost useless the second you try to spend it. Let me walk you through what actually happens to dirty money, because once you see it, you'll see this system running underneath things that look completely normal to you. For every criminal, don't listen to anything I'll explain, and for everybody else, subscribe and let's get into it. Think about what you can and what you can't do with that money. You can't put it in a bank, because the moment you deposit a big amount of cash, the bank is legally required to report it. You also can't buy a house or a car with it, without someone on the other hand writing down where the money came from. And the only answer you really have is that it came from a crime. And that is the exact answer that puts you in prison. So in the beginning, your $1 million are completely frozen. Here is where laundering your money comes to play, meaning turning money you can't touch into money you can spend without anyone becoming suspicious. The first thing you have to do is get that cash into the banking system, and that's harder than it sounds because the physical cash can get you in trouble. In the US, anytime a bank takes in more than $10,000 in cash, it has to file a report to the government. So you can't just carry your suitcase up to the counter. What people do instead is break the amount up, dozens of small deposits, each one a few $1,000s, spread across different accounts on different days, all of them staying just under $10,000. Doing this is called structuring. And then there are people called smurfs, whose whole job is just to do that. Casinos are another classic way to launder money. You go in with dirty cash, buy a big stack of chips, play just enough to look normal, and then cash the chips back in and ask for a check. Now you're walking out with a check from the casino, and on paper it looks like you had a good night at the tables. But now you've got a new problem. That money is sitting in an account with your name on it, and there's a clean trail leading straight back to the crime. So the next thing you do is move it again and again until that trail is impossible to follow. For example, you send it to a company you own. That company wires it abroad to pay an invoice to a second company that you also secretly control. That one moves it again, maybe by buying and selling something, maybe by doing nothing at all, except passing it along. A lot of these companies only exist on paper, just a name and a bank account with no real business behind them. Every single transfer looks legal on its own, and the more transfers you make, the more the original crime is buried. Tracing $1 back to the start now would take banks and governments in 5 different countries all agreeing to cooperate. These days, a lot of this happens with crypto. You put the dirty cash into Bitcoin, then send it through hundreds of small transfers between accounts that aren't in your name. By the end, the money has been split up and moved around so many times that nobody can follow where it started, and you turn it back into normal money looking clean. Between 2007 and 2015, around 200 billion euros of suspicious money moved through a single branch of one bank in Estonia, Danske Bank. Most of it came out of Russia and nearby countries. By using this exact method until it looked like ordinary international business, investigators think a huge part of it was dirty money getting cleaned. But money going in circles still isn't money you can actually spend. For that, it has to come back to you looking like honest income you earned. And the cleanest way to do that is to own a business that naturally takes in a lot of cash. Let's say you own a car wash.
You wanna buy my car wash? $20 million.
A car wash sells a service. Nobody really can prove how many cars drove through today. So you report 500 washes when you actually did 200. And you come up for these 300 more customers with your dirty cash. Now that money is business income. It goes into the bank looking completely normal. And you even pay tax on it. Paying tax on stolen money feels insane until you realize that now finally the government's own paperwork says this is money you earned. El Chapo's cartel did exactly this with car dealerships and restaurants. On paper, he was just a guy running a few shops that happened to do great business. This is why you probably heard people joke about the restaurant that's always empty but somehow never closes, or the little shop that never has customers but stays open for years. The business runs fine with barely anyone walking in. All it really provides is a believable reason to have a lot of cash. There are even 2 bigger methods to do that. Say you ship a container of t-shirts from one country to another. The shirts have a value of $50,000, but you write the invoice for $500,000. The buyer, who is really just you again, pays the full $500,000 and on paper it looks like a legal export deal. You've just moved $450,000 across a border, and every document says it was honest business. Moving dirty money by lying on trade invoices is one of the biggest laundering channels on earth. You can also use the same method in the real estate business. You buy a building with dirty money, rent it out, and the rent comes back to you as clean income year after year. That's also the reason why those expensive, half-empty luxury apartments in big cities turn up in nearly every major laundering case. Nobody knows exactly how much money runs through the money laundering business, since the entire point is to stay invisible. But the usual estimate from the UN's Crime and Drug Office is that somewhere between 2 and 5% of the whole world's economy gets laundered every single year. At the low end, that's about $800 billion. At the high end, it's getting close to $2 trillion every year. If this system is so well known, then how is it possible that if every big bank has entire departments and every government has entire agencies built to stop it, that money laundering is still running at that size? To understand that, we need to know that cleaning money is a service and the people doing it get paid very well. Every time that cash flows through a bank, the bank collects its fees, which is a big part of why that branch in Estonia was so profitable in the first place. And on the rare occasion a giant bank does get caught, what happens is they get a fine. Danske Bank and several others have paid fines in the billions, which sounds like a lot until you set it next to everything they earned moving that money for years. For a bank that size, the fine can come out to less than the profit it made in the first place. Take HSBC, one of the biggest banks in the world. For years, it moved money for the Mexican drug cartels. The Sinaloa cartel got so comfortable that they packed their cash into boxes built to exactly fit under the bank's teller windows. In 2012, HSBC admitted to it and paid almost $2 billion. Not a single person went to prison, and the bank kept running like nothing happened. The whole system is essentially a loophole. But before we wrap this up, there's one final funny thing that I want to tell you, and that is where the term money laundering even comes from. The term money laundering gets pinned on Al Capone, with the story that he cleaned his cash by running it through laundromats. That story isn't even possible. Laundromats didn't exist yet when Capone was convicted back in 1931, and people forget what actually put him in prison: tax evasion. The government couldn't pin the big crimes on him, so they went after his money instead, because Capone was sitting on a fortune he had no legal way to explain. The man this whole system is named after is the one guy who couldn't pull it off. And that's really what the whole thing comes down to. $1 million of dirty money is only ever worth the story that comes with it. If you fail to give it one, it turns straight back into what that suitcase was at the very start. $1 million you can't touch, sitting in a closet, slowly turning into evidence against you. If you like breakdowns of systems like these, subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one.